Good evening and thank you for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Parikshit Luthra and here are the headlines we are tracking at this hour. Markets end the day and the week flat after bouts of heavy volatility, but Indian equities are turning into foreign money magnets once again. $7 billion coming in during July and August. Data points to a lot more inflows on the anvil as India's fundamentals stand out against other Asian and emerging markets. The RBI issues new digital lending guidelines to protect borrowers' data from being misused to commit fraud. As per the RBI, regulated entities cannot store borrowers' data except for some basic minimal information. Also, data cannot be collected without borrowers' explicit consent. New rules to be applicable to the existing customers availing fresh loans and to new customers effective immediately. Demand for work under the government's flagship MGNREGA scheme is lower than the last 2 years, reflecting a return to normalcy after COVID-led distress. Data shows that monthly demand for MGNREGA work has fallen consistently. There has been a 56% dip between May and August. The government proposes some strict testing standards for electric vehicles and EV batteries to improve safety. Proposals include multiple sensors to detect temperature and electrical fluctuations and a safety fuse. Seek stakeholder feedback in the next 30 days. Starbucks names Lakshman Narasimhan as the new CEO a day after he steps down as Reckitt CEO. Lakshman will join Starbucks on the 1st of October and will be succeeding Howard Schultz from next April. 13 bidders enter the race for a minority stake sale in NTPC Green Energy. Sources say bidders include Canadian Pension Fund, Petronas, Brookfield and ArcelorMittal, and that NTPC is hoping for 2,000 crore rupees through the sale before it looks at listing the subsidiary. Prime Minister Narendra Modi commissions India's first indigenous aircraft carrier, the INS Vikrant. The 43,000-ton warship, which costs 20,000 crores, is the largest to be built in India and puts India on par with 5 other nations that can build their own aircraft carriers. Let's get to the day's market action. It was a flat end to a volatile week for the market. Sensex and Nifty closed flat after swinging between gains and losses. Nifty slipped 3 points while Sensex gained 37 points. Mid-cap index gained for 11th consecutive week despite falling by over 100 points. RBI has released operational guidelines for digital lending in a bid to protect borrowers from growing frauds and unethical recovery practices. As per the RBI, regulated entities cannot store borrowers' data except for some basic minimal information. Data cannot be collected without borrowers' explicit consent. New rules to be applicable to the existing customers availing fresh loans and to new customers effective immediately. However, in order to ensure a smooth transition, regulated entities have been given time till 30th of November 2022 to conform to new guidelines in letter and spirit. Ritu Singh gets us more.
The Reserve Bank of India has released the much-awaited digital lending guidelines based on the recommendations of the working group, and this has been done in a bid to protect borrowers from growing frauds and unethical recovery practices that have been seen in this space. And these rules very clearly say that any loan disbursement and repayment has to be done directly into the bank account of the borrower and not any third party or lending service provider. Any data of the borrower which is stored by these third parties or loan service providers can only be very minimal, only for the purpose of operations, and no data of the borrower can be used or saved without the explicit consent of the borrower. RBI has also mandated a full disclosure of the all-inclusive cost of these digital loans, which has to be presented to the borrower in a key fact statement at the time of sanctioning the loan. No automatic increase in limits, in credit limits can happen, which has often been the case, which is also now something that RBI has clamped down on. Data collected by digital lending apps will have to be need-based and also have clear audit trails. Importantly, all of these loans, irrespective of the nature and tenor, will have to be disclosed by the regulated entity to the credit information companies as per the existing rules. Largely, this ends any sort of uncertainty around the digital lending guidelines. It also, it could increase the cost of compliance for some of the fintechs, but overall, it is seen as a positive step, in protection of the borrowers. Of course, we'll have to see how the industry reacts to these.
All right. Thank you very much, Ritu Singh, for joining us. Fewer people are demanding work under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, as per the Finance Ministry. This reflects the return to normalcy after 2 years of COVID-led distress. There has been a 56% decline in the number of people seeking jobs under the government's flagship Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme between May and August. Sapna Das gets us more.
Absolutely. In fact, the Finance Ministry data is also pretty much clear on that front, and the MGNREGA data is in public domain. This can be easily availed and checked out. So starting off first, of course, the Ministry's comment saying that in the last 2 odd years, there has been a significant decline in the demand for work under MGNREGA by individuals especially. So if you look at FY22 versus FY21, FY21 was the year when COVID was at its peak, and there was a COVID-led nationwide lockdown. So if you look at FY22, around 40 odd crore people had availed, or rather there was demand for work by individuals under MGNREGA, 40 odd crore individuals. The number was much higher in FY21 at close to 45 crores. So that's one data set. Also, month on month, sequentially, this decline in the demand for work is very much visible. So if you look at the Finance Ministry data point, they are talking about May on May this year compared to May last year. So this year, May, the number was almost half of what it was last year. The demand for work by individual category is down by almost 40%. And if you come down to August now, in fact, the demand has been the lowest so far. Around, and if you compare this with May, it's a sizable dip of almost 56%. So in May, maybe around 4.4 crore individuals demanded work under MGNREGA. In the month of August, this is below 2 crores. So this is what the data indicates. But Ministry at its end is clear that they are not trying to say that this could be because the job market is stabilizing. But the Ministry is very much clear on the fact that this clearly indicates that there's a return to normalcy after 2 years of distress caused by COVID.
All right. Thank you very much, Sapna, for joining us with that update. Coffee giant Starbucks has named Lakshman Narasimhan as Howard Skulls' successor. The 55-year-old executive will be joining Starbucks from the 1st of October as incoming CEO and will take over from Skulls in April. Skulls will remain on the board after the transition. Lakshman's appointment to the Starbucks top post comes a day after he resigned from Reckitt. The government has proposed some strict testing standards for electric vehicles and EV batteries to improve safety. Proposals include multiple sensors to detect temperature and electrical fluctuations and a safety fuse. Stakeholder comments have been sought over the next 30 days, and the new guidelines will come into effect from the 1st of October. This is what the government is proposing at this juncture. 13 bidders enter the race for a minority stake sale in NTPC Green Energy. Sources say bidders include Canadian Pension Fund, Petronas, Brookfield and ArcelorMittal, and that the NTPC is hoping for 2,000 crore rupees through the sale before it looks at listing the subsidiary. In a big boost to India's defence arsenal, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has commissioned India's first ever indigenous aircraft carrier, the INS Vikrant, at a special ceremony in Kochi. Called as India's largest warship, INS Vikrant is built at a cost of 20,000 crore rupees. The Prime Minister called the warship a vibrant symbol of Indian pride.
आत्मनिर्भर होते भारत का अद्वितीय प्रतिबिंब है विक्रांत। आजादी के अमृत महोत्सव का अतुलनीय अमृत है विक्रांत। आईएनएस विक्रांत पर हो रहा ये आयोजन विश्व क्षितिज पर भारत के बुलंद होते हौसलों की हुंकार है।
And time for a short break, but coming up, Bollywood is in a funk. It has been for over 2 years now. We tell you the reason why after this short break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. A Kerala court recently granted bail to an accused in a sexual harassment case, saying that the charges did not stand because the complainant wore sexually provocative dresses. This is not the only case where such a shocking observation was made by an Indian court. There have been several instances where judges have passed orders that have raised eyebrows. Ashmit Kumar has put together all the controversial orders passed by courts in the recent past.
The Indian judiciary has on some occasions displayed a surprisingly uncomfortable relationship with women's rights and their ability to exercise agency. The Supreme Court has issued guidelines on gender sensitivity, but despite Supreme Court prescriptions, there has been a spurt of court orders and observations that can only be described as sexist and misogynistic. We take a look at 5 such instances in the last 3 months alone. In an order on September 1st, the Kerala High Court, while deciding a marital dispute, the judge took the opportunity to preach to the youth. The order reads in I quote, Kerala was once famous for its well-knit family bondage, but the present trend, it seems, to break the nuptial tie or flimsy or selfish reasons or for extramarital relationships unmindful of their children. The order further adds, nowadays, the younger generation think that marriage is an evil that could be avoided to enjoy free life without any liabilities or obligations. They would expand the word wife as worry invited for life, substituting the old concept of wise investment forever. The consumer culture of use and throw seems to have influenced our matrimonial relationships as well. Live-in relationships are on the rise, just to say goodbye when they fell apart. Unquote again, words there coming from the High Court itself. But staying with Kerala, on August 12th, a session court granted anticipatory bail to a 74-year-old activist accused of sexual harassment. Now, as per the court, it's the victim that had to be blamed. The court held, and I quote here again, photos produced reveal that complainant herself is exposing to dresses which are having some sexual provocative one, unquote. Impossible to believe that a man aged at 74 and physically disabled can forcibly put the complainant in his lap, unquote. Now, the accused name is Civik Chandran. The judge's name was S. Krishna Kumar. Bear these names in mind. The reason I ask is because I bring you to case number 3 now. Earlier in August, Civik Chandran, the very same man, again found himself charged with sexual harassment. He was again granted anticipatory bail, again by the same judge, Judge Krishna Kumar. His order this time read, highly unbelievable that he will touch the body of the victim fully knowing that she is a member of scheduled caste, unquote. This judge has now been transferred to a labour court in Kerala. That brings us to case number 4. We now shift our focus to Allahabad High Court. A father-in-law charged with seeking sexual favours from the daughter-in-law was protected by the High Court. The court slammed the quote-unquote shamelessness of the victim for recounting her experiences in the FIR. Here's how the order read. The order reads, and I quote here again, the graphic and vivid descriptions of the incident without any shame or hitch of any sort speaks out volume of mental condition and amount of venom and poison in the mind of the informant. In our traditional Indian family, where there are residing in a joint family with unmarried son, it is highly improbable and difficult to digest the allegations of demanding sexual favors from her daughter-in-law by the father-in-law or brother-in-law. This brings us to the final case, case number 5. On June 1st, the same High Court, that's the Allahabad High Court, granted bail to a father-in-law charged with raping her daughter-in-law. The High Court cited Indian culture as the accused person's defense. The High Court observed it is quite unnatural that father-in-law shall commit rape of his daughter-in-law in our Indian culture. Now, critics have slammed these orders as instances where the judiciary is furthering misogyny rather than fighting it, and that Supreme Court guidelines being openly flouted by the lower courts should cause alarm bells to ring.
All right. Thank you very much, Ashmit, for getting us all those orders. Let's shift focus now. Fast-moving consumer goods. That's the next big bet that Reliance Industries is gearing up for. The foray will see the company take its private labels to stores and acquire local brands to pick up market share. It's a highly competitive market. CNBC-TV18's Shilpa Ranipeta takes us through Reliance's strategy for this new business vertical.
I'm excited to announce that this year, we will launch our fast-moving consumer goods business.
This will plunge Reliance Industries into a highly competitive $100 billion market and pit it against a list of veritable giants that include HUL, Britannia and ITC. But Reliance, which is no stranger to creating disruptions, is betting it can do it one more time and still stand apart with its approach.
The objective of this business is to develop and deliver products that solve every Indian's daily needs with high-quality products at affordable pricing. As part of our commitment to India's rich culture and heritage, we will soon start marketing quality goods produced by tribals and other marginalized communities across India.
Reliance Retail will build a brand portfolio through a combination of its own brands, joint ventures and acquisitions under the Reliance Retail Consumer Brands umbrella. Phase 1 will see partnerships and acquisitions with strong local brands across key categories like staples, food and beverages, home and personal care and beauty. It has already set the ball rolling with the acquisition of iconic soft drink brand Campa from Pure Foods, Socio from Surat-based Hijur, and Tamil Nadu-based food brand Varalakshmi. Reliance will also transform its existing stable of over 20 private labels into consumer brands and is likely to strengthen these brands with more launches and acquisitions. Experts say Reliance's strategy of acquiring local brands will help reduce its time to market significantly.
Over the last 50-60 years, there have been multiple brands which have come, they did well in their times, and then they faded away for whatever reasons. Now, the younger customers may not necessarily recall those brands, but a smart company can take those brands, refresh the memory of some of the people to say that, look, these brands were power brands at some point in time, but launch new products under the umbrella of that brand there. I think it's a very, very intelligent, very interesting, and potentially a very successful strategy that Reliance has undertaken.
But the transition will come with its own set of challenges.
Typically, even through its FMCG foray thus far, being very B2B or very, through its supermarket dealers' own brands, private labels, etc. A private label going public is a big, big move. Private label competence is back-end. Public label competence is front-end. Companies such as Colgate, whether it be Reckitt, etc., have honed this competence over decades. So, very simply put, I would say Reliance needs to cobble together its ability to front-end brand positioning. That's very, very important. And I think that will take a decade or so to put together.
While brands like Campa will help Reliance compete directly with incumbent brands, experts believe that the impact of Reliance's FMCG foray on established FMCG majors will be limited, at least initially. So much of the initial strategy could hinge on offering new and refreshed brands at better prices.
Bulk of India today is still having a very, very low purchasing power, very low discretionary spending power. So they do have aspiration, for example, to have a carbonated beverage. And they would have heard about Coca-Cola, they would have heard about PepsiCo for sure. So they have a brand recall. Tomorrow, if there is a Campa Cola which is promoted and there is a value price differential which is significant for the customer to make a switch, they can make a switch very easily. But I think if Reliance comes in with a value proposition, and in this case, value is basically good price or a better price, there. I don't see a challenge in some of the customers making a switch.
Also, many believe there is ample headroom in the Indian consumption play, especially given changing consumption patterns and aspirational tendencies.
I don't think a single player like us can change the consumption of loose to packed. There are requirement and player for at least 2-3 big players. The staples business is very large in terms of volume. I think there is enough scope for all of us to grow. We don't have to snatch each other's share.
For Reliance, the entry into the FMCG space makes sense. After all, it offers gross margins of 40 to 60% higher than the 15% or thereabouts in the retail space. However, for Reliance to gain market share and grow volumes, experts believe that a transformation from private labels to running consumer brands will require investing heavily in brand building and marketing. But one advantage that Reliance has over a company like ITC or HUL is its extensive network of over 2,500 stores and over 520 billion walk-ins gives it a captive shelf space for its brands and also allows it to leverage the same supply chain for wider distribution of its brands beyond just its own stores. In Mumbai, Shilpa Ranipeta.
All right, that was Shilpa Ranipeta getting you a deep dive into Reliance's FMCG playbook. Let's move on to another special report. Bollywood is in a funk. It has been over 2 years now, ever since the pandemic forced cinema halls to close. There were a couple of hits here and there, but on the whole, the magic is yet to happen. So far, 2022 has been a year the industry would like to forget. Over 25 movies have flamed out spectacularly at the box office, resulted in losses worth over 2,000 crore rupees. But CNBC-TV18 Santhya Gora reports that there is still hope.
Amir Khan's Lal Singh Chadda had a lot riding on it, not just for the film's producers, but for Bollywood as a whole. Many had been hoping the film would spark the end of the box office lull the Hindi film industry has been going through. But it was not to be, because theatres were largely empty, even though it released over the long Independence Day weekend.
इतना सन्नाटा क्यों है भाई?
The 180 crore rupees movie barely made 55.83 crores, with many theatres cancelling shows. Akshay Kumar's Raksha Bandhan, which released at the same time as Lal Singh Chadda, met a similar fate, and it wasn't alone. Ranbir Kapoor's Shamshera, Akshay Kumar's Samrat Prithviraj, Kangana Ranaut's Dhakad, to name a few, have also not managed to entrance audiences. Of the over 58 theatrical releases from Bollywood in 2022, only 3 have managed blockbuster collections. The Kashmir Files, which made 252 crores against a budget of 15 crores, Bhul Bhulaiya 2, which has made over 260 crore rupees against a budget of 70 crores, and Gangubai Kathiawadi, which has made over 210 crores against a budget of 150 crores. Experts say the trend is worrying not just for the industry, but for allied business segments.
This quarter, typically, we are going to see a huge decline in terms of box office because Lal Singh Chadda has not done well, Raksha Bandhan has not done well. There are other films also lined up. Brahmastra also, the expectations are not that very big. I think in terms of numbers, you're going to land up somewhere close to 40 to 45% lower versus pre-COVID levels.
Experts add that there are multiple factors at play here, but the biggest seems to be
the poor content. Bollywood is churning out poor content, and that's why people are not going to the cinemas. Earlier, in the pre-COVID days, stardom worked. Today, stardom nahi. It is content that is working, and if it is bad content, no amount of star value is really coming to the rescue of those films.
The other is the high cost involved with going to cinemas. Given rising inflation, discretionary spending is falling.
Ticket prices are higher, close to 20% versus pre-COVID levels, and that's also somewhat, kind of impacted frequency of the audience.
And audiences have become discerning.
The audience is spoiled for choice. They've got so much of choice, whether on OTT platforms or in cinemas. World cinema they are consuming, world web series they are consuming. Secondly, because they are exposed to world cinema and world web series, their standard of appreciation has gone up.
Fueling this trend are OTT platforms which offer cheaper alternatives. Bollywood is also facing tough competition from regional cinema, especially South Indian cinema. Allu Arjun's Pushpa, for instance, was made with a budget of 180 crore rupees and earned 365 crore rupees at the box office. RRR similarly earned over 700 crore rupees against a budget of 400 crores. The cancel culture has also invaded Bollywood, which is not helping matters, though many believe the impact of this has not been significant.
It is not making any difference to box office. The real box office figures depend on the performance of a film. If the film is good, irrespective of all the controversies, irrespective of all the boycott bandwagon, people will come to the cinemas and watch the film.
There is also a belief that the lull will be short-lived.
Picture abhi baki hai mere dost.
Experts believe that the Hindi film industry is likely to continue facing some hardship for next 2 to 3 quarters, after which there could be some relief. Many are looking to big releases like Alia Bhatt and Ranbir Kapoor's Brahmastra, Akshay Kumar's Ram Setu and Ajay Devgan's Thank God to possibly pick up the slack and turn things around. The question, of course, is whether the success of these films, if they are successful, will be the start of an uptrend or a flash in the pan. Experts are betting on the former scenario and say that all it will take to end the troubles is one great movie. Fundamentally, they maintain. In Mumbai, Santiago.
All right, let's hope that the fortunes of Bollywood filmmakers turn in the year 2023. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. News and updates continue right here on CNBC TV 18.